I'm going to go back to our site folder here and expand it. And inside of this, let's go ahead and take a look at the index.php file and see if anything has changed there. Okay, so this first line is different already. We're starting a session with a function called session start. Now this is a PHP function that we can use in order to begin tracking data based on this particular user session. In this next line, we include our functions.php file, which you've seen before. In this next line, we use a function called dbconnect. And this is actually a function that we've defined in our functions.php file. So let's open up functions.php and take a look. Okay, if we scroll down a bit past a couple of our previous functions that we had, we see dbconnect here. Now you've seen the same type of connection script before. We use the function mysql connect, and we pass it the server name, the database user, and the database password. In this case, we're using our getSetting function that we previously defined up here in order to pull these variables from our settings.php file. So if we go back to our settings file, again, our settings is in the settings folder here, and it's called settings.php. You'll see we have some new settings. We have our DB username, which in this case is root, our DB password, DB server, and DB database. Now, if you've been following along using Acquia Dev Desktop, these settings should be accurate for you, and you shouldn't need to modify anything. But if something doesn't work properly, it could be because the username or server is different on the setup that you have. So you might want to check that before moving on if you end up getting some errors. Now I'll jump back to our functions.php file, and we're looking at dbconnect here. Now again, like you've seen before, mysql connect returns false if these settings aren't right and it's not able to connect to the database. So we check here to see if that happened, and we return an error message and actually kill our script, because from here on out we want to make sure we have access to the database. And it says you are not able to connect to your database because, and then we print out the error from MySQL. Finally, we select our database that we've set in our settings file. And at this point, we're good to start using the database. So let's go back to our index.php file. And we just finished looking at what was happening on this line right here. Our next several lines are identical to our previous example, where we get the path, which we use to determine what page to load in. We build up our product display in the sidebar. We establish our company name, the year that we use in the footer. And now here's some new stuff. So when a user is not logged into the site, we want them to see this login link. But if they have logged in, we want them to be able to log out, and we want to give them access to their account page. So the common convention is to add two links then, once the user is logged in, one to the account page and one to a logout page. So this is some functionality we didn't demonstrate yet, which is the ability to log out. If we go back to the site, you can see this in action. Now the first time this page loaded, you see we still have login up here in the links. But if we refresh the page, you see we now have my account and logout here. Now this is happening because the order of our script is a little bit off. We're building these links before we've established that the user has logged in. If we want to improve this script, we would switch this around so that we're not building these links until after we've processed the login form. All right, now I'll go back to our script here. So these links for login, logout, and my account are now in the login, logout variable, which we can use in our page template file. In our next step, we include the page content, which we've gone over before. In this next line, we use a function called getNotices. Now, you've also seen this in previous examples, but we're pulling it in here. What this custom function allows us to do is to gather notices that we want to display to the user in one place, and then display it all at one time. So if we go back to our functions.php file here, and we scroll down a little bit, we see we have this getNotices function. I'm not going to go over this in great detail because we did so in a previous video, but basically what this does is it uses this notice function here, which we established right above. And this notice function does two things. In this case, we want it to build the output, but it also gathers the output that we pass to it. So if we pass it some text and we leave this action as add, what it will do is add that text to this notices array, which is a static array. In this case, when our action is get, we run this code right here, which goes through and implodes the notices into an unordered list and then sends it back. So in our index.php file, if we go back there, you'll see that notices is now pulled into this variable we can use in our page template file. Now let's take a quick look at our page template file. I'm going to go back to our site folder, and in the includes folder, I'm going to open up page-template.php. In this file, we can see our new variables being used. We have our login, logout links being displayed here in the user menu div. And then we have our notices displaying above the content here in the content div.